Hi, today we're going to be talking about glazing your clay pieces for Art Vista, and this would be for if you have a first grader, second grader, or fifth grader. First grade they do the fish, second grade they do the clay masks, and for fifth grade they do clay houses. So the clay projects are always two parts. For first and second grade it's set C, but you need to actually set two different classroom times with the teacher for this project, not necessarily in the classroom. These projects are done at tables outside of the Art Vista closet in the courtyard. So you need first to set two appointments with your teacher when you're going to bring the kids out of the class, first to create the clay and then to do the glazing session. You also need to inform the school secretary in the front office that you're going to need the tables set up, both for your clay project and then for your glazing project. So when you know the date for each of those, you need to tell them in the front office, I need the tables set up. It's 3 6-foot tables that get put in a line, and the kids, that's enough space for them all to stand around and either create their clay project or in this case, glaze it. So glazing is done after the clay has been created and has dried for a couple of weeks in the classroom, and then has been put through the kiln in the Art Vista closet one time. So all clay pieces get fired twice. First, after a couple of weeks of drying in the classroom, and then they're in this stage and they're pretty tough. They're now hard. All the water has been taken out of them in the firing process, so they're not quite as delicate as they were before the firing. But now they're ready to be glazed. So to set up for your glazing project, you come into the Art Vista closet, and this is all the clay area, and also glazes are here. If you look down here, there's a box with all the different colors of glaze. There's 9 different colors, but there's actually 2 or 3 different containers with that color in it. If you come and some of the containers need to be refilled, you can see that the larger bottles of glaze are over here, and you can refill if there's any empties. So you would just take all of that glaze and bring it out to the tables outside of the room. You're also going to need paintbrushes in the bins that are here. There's many different sizes because you're going to need some small sizes and some larger sizes. They use the larger, of course, to create paint large areas, and then the small ones for a little bit more detail work. So when you come to the tables and you have your glaze, take the lid off of all the glaze containers. Let's say we have 2 of green, 2 blue, 2 orange, and so forth. Put the open container of glaze right on the table, and then put 3 or 4 brushes into each color. So when the kids walk up, the glazes are all along the center of the tables, and each one has 2 or 3, 4 paintbrushes in it, and you should choose different size paintbrushes to put into the glaze containers. Since you have 30 kids and only 2 colors of green, for instance, they can each share the paintbrushes and make sure they put the same paintbrush color into that color glaze. If you're putting a green into the yellow, now the yellow is going to be contaminated. So make sure you tell the kids you can take the brushes out and paint your fish or your mask or your houses, but don't put the wrong color back into the wrong glaze. Also, very important to tell the children, they only paint the top of their piece and the sides. The sides will show when this is hanging on a wall, but do not put any glaze on the back. We never glaze the backs, and that's very important because if the back is glazed and it's placed into the kiln, it will fuse to the kiln, and it's dangerous for the kiln, and the piece will be for sure ruined because we'll have to chip it out of the kiln. So here's an example of 2 pieces that have been glazed and they've gone through the firing process, and you see there's no glaze on the back. Even just a little bit can be a problem. So if a child gets glaze on the back of their piece, there's baby wipes in. So if the child gets some glaze on the back of the piece, inadvertently, perhaps, like it gets drips onto the back of the piece, you can take the baby wipes and just take a baby wipe and just scrub it right off before you put it back into the drying box. That way, when the person who's going to fire the clay, they don't have to spend a long time trying to clean up each piece. You got to make sure there's no glaze on the backs of your pieces. That's also the same for the bottom of the houses. So if there's any glaze that has gone on the bottom, like the floor of the house or the bottom rim where it sets, that needs to be scrubbed off with a baby wipe. Okay, you want to instruct the kids not to just put one coat of glaze on each piece. They really want to put 2 or 3 coats. 3 coats makes it nice and dark and shiny. If they only put 1 coat, it's very light and it's kind of dull and matte finish. So it's good for the kids to put a coat on and then just go right over it with 2 or 3 more coats. So for a total of 3 coats is plenty. If they do 4 coats or 5 coats, it's okay. It's not necessary, but then you get a tendency to have the glaze just drip right off in the firing process. So encourage kids to do 2 or 3 coats on every area of their piece. See? I think those are the main points for glazing. Afterwards, after the project is done, when you're cleaning up, just take all the brushes. Those need to be washed. And then for each container, it's good to take a baby wipe. And since the kids have been going in and out with their brushes, there's going to be glaze that's all along the lip. So please have your helpers wipe the glaze off before they put the lid on. That way the lid won't get dried on and we won't waste the glaze. Glaze is actually very expensive. Each of the large bottles is upwards of $100. So we really need to take care of our glaze and make sure that the lids don't get dried on and people don't put the wrong brushes into the wrong color. So.
And then with the brushes, they can be washed in the sink because they're, right, just water and...
Yeah, brushes can be washed in the sink. There's also a custodial area where they have a hose, so you can hose off the brushes in the custodial area instead of bringing it all back to the classroom to wash it off.